The village didn't look much as Jed crowned the rolling ridge. A straggle of houses fringed the sweep of the river like a bank of wooden reeds, with only the squat church tall enough to compete with the willows weeping into the waters. All else was just a pastoral haze, agriculture. At least he hoped it was. Someone out there would need a hand. This was all alien territory, albeit just a morning's cart ride from the familiar smells of home. He had climbed out of his shy boyhood village to squint out for the first time at the world beyond the comforting circle, school, drafty church, and the ostler that sometimes gave him a farthing for pitching in. He swung down the lane, cultivating the gait of the journeyman, the hireable swagger of the itinerant tinkers, carters and knife sharpeners that visited back home. He memorised features along the way. Home was gone from sight and he might need to retreat. Here was a barn with a fallen roof, a cankered oak and the inscribed stone that probably, he thought, bore the village's name. The year was late gone, as his aunt used to say, but there was still warmth in the air as he clattered down to the small cobbled square where ringworm children ostentatiously picked their noses at him and half-seen women filled shadowy doorways. He dropped his satchel by the trickling fountain and gulped an icy mouthful, tasting so different from the pump back home. "Hello," he announced to no one. "I'm Jed, looking for work. Need an hand? I'm a right tidy helper." The incredulous kids burst into braying laughter, mimicking his accent. He blushed furiously. "All right, so I'm an Abbott's Cross man. What are they? Any of your fathers need work in the fields?" Blank faces. He wondered if this village had sided with the king back when these things mattered, back when he was a boy. Then a woman's voice, firm but with a hint of humour, called out, "Jim Wheatley's short-handed elite craft down by young Water Meadows. If you know one end of side for another, I dare say he'll pay handsome." He strained to see which doorway the voice had come from. "What village is this, lover?" he asked of the air. "Burford St. Mary, lover," she teased, staying hidden. He silently cursed himself for betraying himself, the outsider, thanked the air, and squelched down the beast trot towards the river. A week later, they were gathering in the wheat on a sweltering morning, the air thick with thrips. A hush descended on the men's bawdy song, and Jed looked up from his work to see a woman ambling down the lane with a basket gyrating on her jutting hip. Even from a distance, she had a sultry appeal, a rolling gait that achieved so much more than locomotion. As she drew to the far bank of the river, he could see she was of good complexion, a deal older than he, but temptingly curvaceous and topped with a lustrous tumble of hair. The other men stared fixedly at their hands, but she paid no heed and splashed through the gravelly shallows where salmon sparkled. She walked up to Jed, wet boots squeaking, eyes flashing with defiant assurance. Her flaxen dress was scattered with wheat seeds with a dripping hem. Her nearness was a waft of laughter. Handing him a screw of paper, she said, "I just thought you might be hungry, that's all. There ain't no way these beggars," she waved an imperious hand, "are going to share their tuxes with you." He recognised the voice from the darkened doorway when he had arrived. Before he could thank her, she had splashed back across the ford and started up the lane, hips swaying. Jed stared after her, then down at the roughly wrapped parcel in his hands. He scanned across the men's faces, tight with suppressed humour, as he drew out a roughly shaped bread bun, warm from the oven. "What?" he implored. "What's so cussed laughable?" "Yon Meg's right smitten and no gainsaying," wheezed Albert through a white fog of whiskers even. "Well, it's mighty kind of her, but I already had a bit saved up in yon bag," protested Jed. Nickel, the ginger-haired giant, stumbled guffawing into the crop and sent a hapless bandball scurrying into the patch of Flitch, the one-eared terrier. Albert looked at Jed as if he were a small child. It's the cockle bread, you great dumple. Maybe you don't have them in Ham's Cross, or maybe you're too light of years to know the ways of women. He nodded at the crumpled ridge of the loaf. See, what the maids do, well, mostly they're maids, when they take a shine to a swain, they need a bit of dough and shape it to themselves afore baking it. Jed's incomprehension set Albert's gaze skyward. They press it hard against themselves to take on the shape and flavour of their femaleness, and that draws you in, see, like a love potion. I'd say you were on the oak stripling. Resenting the expectant gaze of his workmates, Jed retreated behind the bole of a giant oak and examined the bread with interest before pulling it apart between dusty fingers and cramming the steaming lumps into his mouth. Maybe he was on the hook like a rolling salmon. 10 harvests passed. The water meadows flooded and drained like a breathing tide. Albert was claimed by the roots of the churchyard yews. When Meg took sick, Jed brought his wife draughts of comfrey in a bur elm chalice, but it was no use. He told himself it was to be expected, what with her having 12 winters on him. He cracked pallid smiles at neighbours' kind words, replaced the nosegay on the door with an ivy wreath, and devised comforting untruths for their bewildered children. As they slept beneath a pile of sheepskins, he turned the papers over in his hands. The papers that the pompous parson had excised from the parish records, sneering at Jed as if he were no more than a beast. The words, of course, meant nothing to him, but he remembered what the parson said all right. Tales, not the telling. A wicked farmer, gone and fled in disgrace. A child of 12, left to birth her own brother. The baby sent away for appearance's sake to another village. And here he was, that child, drawn back like the salmon that fought at the sparkling river, guided by invisible forces. It would have been easy to cast the paper into the fire, deny everything, hope the parson kept his peace, and play the respectable widower. But he'd be damned to be ashamed of her. In the morning, he'd go and see Simeon the stonemason and see how many words he could afford. And even now, if you brush the tick seed away with your shoe, you can still see the stone, smaller than those commemorating the squire's gaze hands. Margaret, wife, mother, sister. And you know, there's reading and there's reading, but not everyone would know that she was all these to just one man.